Zed. Good afternoon and welcome to today's local government education program provided by University of Illinois Extension. My name is Zach Kennedy, Community and Economic Development Specialist for University of Illinois Extension. Before introducing our topic and presenter today, I want to let participants know that for sound quality, we will mute microphones during the presentation. At any time, you should write questions into the chat space. Also, if you have any problems with your connection or audio, add those questions to the chat space as well. We will monitor the chat and I will relay the questions to our speakers at the end of the presentation. Please note that participants will receive slides, links to resources, and a recording for today's webinar. Today's webinar is about energy efficiency policy and programs in Illinois and is the first in a three-part series. We welcome Dr. Ashley Bell from the University of Illinois Extension, Gabriel Guevara from Elevate Energy, and Scott Allen from the Citizens Utility Board. Ashley Bell is an environmental and energy stewardship educator for Extension and co-principal investigator for the Illinois Extension Smart Grid Outreach Project. She delivers statewide programming focused on the electric smart grid, smart meter technology, and home energy efficiency. Her other area of expertise includes waste management with a focus on addressing strategies for diverting waste materials from landfills through recycling, composting, and anaerobic digestion technology. Gabriel Guevara is a recent graduate from University of Illinois, has a master's degree in urban and regional planning, and has for the past year worked for the nonprofit Elevate Energy. Gabriel is responsible for educational outreach, teaching individuals how to be more energy efficient, decrease energy costs, and creating new partnerships between Elevate Energy and local organizations within communities. Scott Allen is an environmental outreach coordinator at the Citizens Utility Board. He joined the organization in 2014 and opened Cub's first downstate office in Hillsborough, Illinois. Scott now lives in Urbana, and in addition to consumer outreach, he represents a caucus of downstate individuals and organizations at the state climate table of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition. So thank you to all of our presenters for being here today, and I'm going to turn it over to Ashley now.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Ashley Bell, and so today I am representing the Illinois Extension Smart Grid Outreach Team. So to kind of give you a brief overview of our Smart Grid team, we are an interdisciplinary statewide team that has been funded by the Illinois Science and Energy Innovation Foundation. And we develop and deliver consumer education pertaining to the electric smart grid, smart meter technology, and home energy efficiency. And we deliver those programs throughout Illinois. So we're currently in our fourth year conducting these educational programs, which primarily target low-income families, senior citizens, as well as rural residents. So if you have a group or an organization who may be interested in receiving further free educational programming pertaining to smart grid or home energy efficiency, please feel free to reach out to the Illinois Extension Smart Grid Outreach Team. So since we have representatives from Elevate Energy and the Citizen Utility Board who are going to talk about demand response programs and utility policy today, I will focus my condensed portion of the webinar today to look at energy efficiency and smart meter technology. So hopefully this webinar will allow you to better understand a household electricity footprint and provide you with some information to help your constituents become more energy efficient, achieve energy cost savings, and reduce demand on the electric grid. So I like to start out my programs by asking, who is your electricity provider? So can you tell me with this poll question here, is your electricity provider Ameren, ComEd, a local electric co-op, or a municipality? So if you happen to check a local co-op or a municipality, can you please place in the chat box, identify the utility provider, please? All right, great. So it seems like the majority of you are either Ameren or ComEd customers. And so a little later in our webinar today, we will discuss some cost saving programs that are available for Ameren and ComEd customers. So I have another question for you. How much electricity does a U.S. home consume monthly? 500, 1,000, 1,500, or 2,000 kilowatt hours per month? All right, we have our responses rolling in here. So according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the average monthly electricity consumption for a U.S. home is between 900 and 1,000 kilowatt hours. Now, I want to point out to you that, of course, electricity usage can vary between households, and the lifestyle and the daily habits of one home could be completely different from another home. So, some factors to take into consideration of why electricity usage may be different between households may be, say, the number of people who reside there, the size of the home, the age of the home. One home may contain all electric appliances with no gas appliances, or a home could be designed to maximize heating and cooling needs. So the take-home message that I really want to stress here is that energy consumption will vary from household to household. So if you want to make comparisons, it is always best to use your own energy data and compare your own energy consumption to your previous time periods. Okay, so we've now identified how much electricity a household is consuming monthly. So now I want to take this a step further, and we're going to play this game, a quick game called Guess That Wattage. So I'm going to show you some common household electronic appliances, and I would like for you to guess how much electricity does each of these consume. So first up, we have a 50-gallon water heater. So let's assume that this water heater is for the average family of 4. So with my poll question here, how much electricity does this 50-gallon water heater consume? 175, 300, or 400 kilowatt hours per month? So our 50-gallon water heater uses 400 kilowatt hours per month. Okay, so let's move on into our laundry room. And here we have a standard washing machine with temperature settings. So we have 2 questions here. So our first question here is for a cold water setting. How much electricity does a washing machine consume? 0.5, 2, or 5 kilowatt hours per load? And then our second question, with our hot water setting, how much electricity is used per load? 1, 3.4, or 6.5? So our cold water wash uses 0.5 kilowatt hours per load, and the hot water wash uses 3.4 kilowatt hours per load. So you can see here the drastic difference here between the cold water wash and the hot water wash, with that hot water wash using over 3 times the amount of electricity as that cold water wash. So a significant amount of energy went into heating that water. So for energy savings, consider using cold water washes as much as possible, and many laundry detergents are now formulated to achieve an optimal wash even while using the cold water setting. So let's move on to cooling our home. And we have here a 24,000 BTU central air conditioning unit. And let's assume that it runs for about 7 hours per day. So how much electricity does our air conditioner use? 500, 700, or 900 kilowatt hours per month? So it uses 700 kilowatt hours per month. Now with our last appliance, let's move over into our kitchen. And we have here a frost-free refrigerator that was manufactured in 2002 or later. And let's just assume that this is a 17 cubic feet refrigerator. So how much electricity does this consume? 38, 64, or 82 kilowatt hours per month? So our refrigerator uses 82 kilowatt hours per month. So remember, I told you that this is a newer model refrigerator. So if you have an older model unit, it may be using twice as much electricity. So that's why you have utility companies such as Ameren who have programs where they will pick up that refrigerator to be recycled, and they will provide you with a $50 check that you can put towards purchasing a more energy efficient unit. And this upgrade could potentially save you $100 or more in your yearly electricity costs. So now that we have seen the electricity consumption of some of our common household appliances, let's look at some of the biggest consumers in our home. So what you're looking at here, this is some of the latest data available from 2019 from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So let's look at the top 4 consumers of electricity in our home. So that comes from heating and cooling the air in our homes, followed by water heating and refrigeration. And this big portion over here, this 31%, this represents other uses. So it kind of combines things together like your small electronic devices and exterior lighting. So you can really see here that since we have so many numerous small electronic devices in our home, this electricity consumption can quickly add up. Now, I really want to point out to you that improving the energy efficiency of your home does not always have to be a costly project, because just by you making some small changes in your lifestyle and using inexpensive or no-cost strategies, you can still make your home more energy efficient. So since I only have a few minutes left, I just briefly want to highlight some additional low-cost or no-cost strategies for improving the energy efficiency of a home. So remember that heating and cooling, that was the top energy consumer in your home. So since we're in the summertime, remember to set that thermostat between 76 and 78 degrees. Research has shown that for each degree that you're able to increase that temperature on your thermostat, you're able to reduce your electricity consumption by 2 to 3%. And also make sure that you're checking on those air filters at least monthly or as recommended by your manufacturer. Now, water heating, that was the second largest energy consumer in your home. So oftentimes that manufacturer setting, that water heater is set at 140 degrees. But you can save energy by reducing that temperature to 126 degrees, and that can help you save heating your water up by an extra 20 degrees. And depending on your home or your location of your water heater, insulate that water tank in that pipe, in your pipes. That may also be another option. And in regards to lighting, consider replacing your older bulbs with LED bulbs. And as you can see from this chart here, in comparison to the traditional incandescent bulb, these LED bulbs are 6 to 7 times more energy efficient. So that means that the amount of electricity that you consume with lighting can be reduced by up to 80%. And this could potentially have you a cost savings leading up to $75 per year. And additionally, with these LED bulbs here, you can notice that when it comes to the lifetime of these bulbs, they're up to 25 times longer the lifetime span of our LED bulbs. So lastly, I would like to talk about vampire power, or people may refer to it as phantom loads. So when you have an electronic device like a television plugged into an outlet, it will continue to use energy and draw a small amount of power, even when that device is turned off. So that is what is known as vampire power. And this may only be a very small amount of energy loss, but this can definitely add up over time considering the amount of small devices that we have plugged in. So what you see down here is what's called a smart power strip. So in order to reduce phantom loads, vampire power, the best option is to purchase a smart power strip. So you don't even have to worry about flipping the switch on this smart power strip, because it automatically senses when your device is no longer in use, and it will stop the flow of power to that device, thus stopping the wasting of electricity and saving you money. So just like we had that smart power strip, it basically seems like everything is becoming smarter these days. So even our old electrical grid, which is over 100 years old, it is being updated and modernized, and it is being called the smart grid. So as part of that smart grid update, smart meters are being installed at our homes. So these smart meters here, they allow for two-way communication. So that means that the smart meter is able to send information to the electric company, and the electric company is able to send information to the smart meter. Now, with our older analog meters, the electric company would have to send someone out to our home to read our meter in order to determine our bill. And if a reader wasn't available, they would just estimate how much electricity they thought we consumed. And I'm quite sure from time to time we thought that estimation may not have been quite right. But with these smart meters, since these meters are able to directly communicate with the electricity company and inform them of exactly how much electricity we are consuming, this means that we are getting a more accurate bill. And additionally, these meters, as they are communicating with the electricity company, it can also inform them if there has been a power outage. Thus, this means that it would eliminate the need for us to have to call to report an outage. Now, particularly the feature that I like most about smart meters is that it allows you the capability to use an online account that's provided by your utility company, and you can see day by day, hour by hour, just how much electricity your home has consumed. So this is providing you with a wealth of information about your electricity usage in your home. Thus, will allow you to have greater control over managing your electricity costs. And by having these smart meters, Ameren and ComEd customers can take advantage of demand response programs that can help you achieve energy cost savings while implementing energy efficiency practices. So I want to turn over the webinar now to Gabe, who will explain some of these programs offered by Ameren and ComEd.
You're muted, Gabriel.
Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. So I'm now going to talk about the demand programs that Ashley mentioned that were made possible due to the upgrades in the form of the smart meter. Let me go back. There we go. The smart made possible by the smart meter. So some of the programs that I'm going to talk to you about today are Peak Time Rewards, which is an Ameren program, Peak Time Savings, which is a ComEd program, Power Smart Pricing, that's Ameren, and Hourly Pricing, that's a ComEd program. And these programs fall under either Peak Time Rebate or RealTime Pricing programs. So without further ado, I'm going to start talking about the peak time rebate programs. So a peak time rebate program is basically an incentive-based program that's designed to help reduce the stress on the grid on high demand days, also known as peak time days. So a peak time day typically happens over the summer on extremely hot days where the utility company feels as though that they may not be able to efficiently and effectively supply power to everyone on the grid because the demand is so high. So like the way that the program works is that if a customer is enrolled in this program, the utility company will contact that customer 24 hours before the peak time day with a designated time frame so that they can reduce their power during that time frame on that day. And if they're able to reduce their power at that time frame, then they will receive a credit on their next month's bill. And if for whatever reason, if they aren't able to reduce their power, nothing happens. There's no penalty whatsoever. So being enrolled in this program has benefits and no penalty and no drawbacks at all. And the way that ComEd and Ameren operate their peak time rebate programs was pretty much the same. There's really no difference between either program except their names. So the next program that I'm going to talk about is real-time pricing. And the interesting thing about like real-time pricing, it's that it's operates differently than how we normally think about the price of electricity. And what we normally think about electricity is that the price of electricity is constant throughout the day. In actuality, the price of electricity fluctuates because of the demand fluctuates throughout the day for electricity. And so this graph here kind of represents like how the price of electricity changes throughout the day. The orangey brown line represents the trend of the electricity price during the summer months, and then the blue line represents the price of electricity trends for the non-summer months. And for the summer months, there's a one peak, typically around the midday, around roughly around 1 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then for the non-summer months, there's two peaks, one in the morning, roughly around like 8 to 10, and then another peak towards the late afternoon around 4 to 6. And those peaks represent the high demand of electricity on that day, thus meaning when electricity is going to be at its most expensive. And so by being put on a real-time pricing program and armed with this knowledge on like when the price of electricity is going to be at its most expensive, the consumer is able to adapt their behavior to use electricity on off-demand hours, and thus use electricity when it's at its cheapest, thus reducing the stress on the grid for the high demand days, and also like saving money because they're using electricity when it's at its cheapest. So that's basically, you know, the idea of real-time pricing and like how it works. And so Ameren's real-time pricing program is called Power Smart Pricing. And the only cost that Ameren's program there's a cost associated to Ameren's program, which is a $2.25 monthly fee. But outside of that, there isn't a cost associated with that program. And Ameren's current price of electricity is 4.396 cents. But if you go to, if you go to Power Smart Pricing's website, which shows you the real-time price of electricity for today, and you go to the peak time today, which is about like 4 o'clock today, you can see that the price of electricity at its most expensive is 3.8 cents. And the price of electricity at its cheapest today was at 4 a.m. this morning, and it was 1.4 cents. So you can see that how, you know, using electricity during off-peak hours, how you can, you know, really save money on a real-time program. You could really save money on like a current program. So that's Ameren's program version of the program. And then ComEd's version of the program operates quite similarly, but there is like, you know, a little difference to difference from Ameren's Power Smart Pricing, where ComEd's program, there is no monthly fee associated with being enrolled into the program. And also too, with ComEd, unlike Ameren, ComEd, they give you the price of electricity hour by hour. So if you wanted to look ahead and plan to see like what the price of electricity is for like 6 o'clock this evening, you won't know the actual price of electricity, but they will have like a projected price. So to give you an idea of what it is, of what the price of electricity is, would be later today. And so, and at ComEd, their current price of electricity is 6.473 cents. And if you go to ComEd's hourly pricing, you can see that today at 4 o'clock, the projected price is 4.1 cents, which is going to be where electricity will be at its most expensive, and then roughly, you know, the lowest price of electricity today was 1.2 cents. So again, you can see how being on a real-time pricing program, a person is liable to save compared to being on the constant rate model. And so those are all the programs that I was going to talk to you today about. And now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Scott, and he will talk about policies that help shape these programs and help them come to be. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing, pass it on to Scott.
Thank you, Gabriel, and hello, everybody. Here we go. So again, I'm Scott Allen from the Citizens Utility Board, and yeah, the piece that I'm going to talk about is to try to sort of tie in all the things that Gabriel and Ashley mentioned, and to show how we got here through policy. So we're looking at kind of 4 major policies in the last 20 or so years, and the smart grid technology and energy efficiency programs and incentives, the pricing and demand response programs, None of these things were conceived and implemented without specific mandates from the General Assembly and the regulatory bodies that oversee investor-owned utilities. So utility and energy policy and regulation has existed for well over 100 years in Illinois, but these few key policies starting in '97 are significant in the way that they both restrain investor-owned utilities and the way that they prepare consumers in the grid for renewable energy generation, where energy efficiency and adapted consumer behaviors are critical. So the 1997 Electric Service Consumer Choice and Rate Relief Law was a response to energy rates that had gotten out of control. The old scenario where the distribution company owned the power plants as well resulted in vast inefficiencies rather, that sent consumer costs spiraling. And so in '97, the General Assembly passed this law, which required electric distribution companies to spin off their generators into separate companies. The clearest example of this is Commonwealth Edison was split from Exelon Corporation. ComEd became a subsidiary of Exelon. And while they own, ComEd that is, owns all the electricity distribution infrastructure, Exelon owns all of the generation infrastructure, the nuclear plants. But in other words, a simple way to say this is that a utility can't own both generation and distribution. Second major component of this act was freezing electric and gas rates for 10 years. And again, that's as a response to out of control rates. So the next major piece of legislation came in 2007 with the Illinois Power Agency Act. The act created its regulatory namesake. The IPA is tasked with procuring affordable, reliable, and sustainable electricity for Ameren, ComEd, and Mid-American customers. And so this map is to show all of this area here is ComEd territory for electricity. This little piece over here is Mid-American. And for the most part, everything below here is Ameren. What this doesn't show are the co-op utilities and the municipal utilities, just kinds of give people a general idea of the territory we're talking about. So the IPA is responsible for procuring electricity for consumers of those three investor-owned utilities. So if you don't choose an alternative supply, the IPA is procuring that electricity, and then the utility is passing it to you at no cost. So the utility is not making profit anymore on the supply of that. They're only making profit on the distribution of electricity. The Act also established three standards. The first was the Renewable Portfolio Standard. It set Illinois on a course to achieve 25% renewable energy by 2025. The Energy Efficiency Portfolio Standard set percentages by which Ameren and ComEd had to reduce the amount of electric load they delivered. The third standard was what we call net metering, and it required all three of these utilities, Mid-American, ComEd, and Ameren, to credit their customers for electricity that they generated, meaning like with solar panels on your house. They have to credit you for the electricity that you generate, but that you don't use to offset your own load and you send back out onto the grid. So when you send that power back out onto the grid, you're going to be credited in some way by the utility, and that will be reflected on your bill. Both of the portfolio standards were great concepts, but there were very few incentives that would kick off the investments and start the renewable generation build out that's going to allow Illinois to reach its mandate of 25% renewable energy by the year 2025. So moving on to the 2011 Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act, or I think a lot of times it's referred to as the Grid Modernization Act. And this is where we really start getting into the stuff that Ashley and Gabe talked about. This act allowed utility companies to apply a formula to recover costs from ratepayers. And in exchange, Ameren and ComEd committed to invest in upgrading grid technology, as Ashley mentioned, and developing and implementing the programs that Gabriel discussed. So by incentivizing consumers to participate in energy efficiency and demand response programs, and by providing the infrastructure needed for these programs, the utilities are more easily able to meet the load reduction requirements that the IPA set for them. You know, that helps them to, the consumer will benefit, but also the utility will be in compliance with what is now law. So we still have the problems of the incentives not really being strong enough to, you know, spark this growth of building that is going to help us make that renewable generation. And along comes the 2016 Future Energy Jobs Act, commonly referred to as FEJA. Now, FEJA was designed to provide the incentives to build the original, it's creating those incentives that's going to kick off the standards laid out in the original renewable portfolio standard. In addition, it increased energy efficiency standards while creating more robust energy efficiency programs, in addition to the ones that Gabe mentioned. A major component of the incentive structure was a renewable energy credit, or REC market, which is essentially, it's a lottery system where the RECs become available to winning developers. So a developer applies and it's conducted randomly like a lottery is. And if you win within that lottery system, you're allotted a series of renewable energy credits. The Illinois Power Agency is in charge of purchasing those RECs on behalf of the state of Illinois so that the state can be in compliance with those, with that 25% renewable generation by 2025. But it's not just through the lottery that these RECs become active and help the state meet that goal. Individual homeowners who install solar panels on their roofs, they also generate renewable energy credits, and they're paid directly by the Illinois Power Agency for the RECs, you know, for equivalent to the generation that they're making. So this provides an incentives to individual consumers. If they're interested in getting solar put on their roof, this is going to help cover some of that cost, because you know that the Illinois Power Agency will pay you a certain amount of electricity, or a certain amount of money for the electricity that your system is going to generate. And you get that check up front, so you can immediately apply that to what you owe on your solar system. FEJA also enabled the community solar program and the Solar for All program. And community solar it allows people who aren't able to install or who are unable to install their own panels to also participate in the renewable energy space, the renewable energy economy. And that works by individual consumers who maybe they live in an apartment building. They can subscribe to a large offsite solar project, and they're compensated on their Ameren bills. It's a discount to the the subscriber supply section of their bill. And they're done by territory. So you apply or you subscribe to a project in Ameren territory. It doesn't matter where you move to in Ameren territory, you carry that with you to your next bill. So that's a way to get people who wouldn't otherwise have access to renewable energy. They can still see some of the benefits of discounted bills. The Solar for All program is similar to, and in some ways, an access to community solar. It's specifically designed for income qualified subscribers. And if you access community solar through Solar for All, you're guaranteed 50% savings on the supply section of your bill. And it also provides nonprofits or public agencies that serve low income or environmental justice or otherwise marginalized and underserved communities. It allows those organizations or those entities to install solar on their buildings at a heavily discounted rate. And so that was the last piece. The 2016 Future Energy Jobs Act was the last piece of major energy policy made in the state. And over the last 20 years, Illinois utility and energy policy has evolved in significant ways, especially as we're trying to prepare for the future, the future of energy generation. But there are still a number of problems that exist that can really only be solved through policy making. And in the next couple of years, these issues are going to become more critical. Right now, there are several proposed bills that aim to, in some way, impact the grid, impact energy generation, impact utility consumer relationships, impact the trajectory of climate change or any number of other issues. And so whether the General Assembly makes new policies this fall or sometime in the upcoming legislative sessions, these issues are going to have to be dealt with. But there are a few things that it's seen that this is stuff that CUB supports, and we're kind of hearing this message, in the nation or around the world. But consumers will have to have. This is kind of CUB's number one issue: is consumers have to have reliable access to the cheapest, most environmentally sustainable energy. But also Black and brown and underserved communities that have suffered the worst effects of energy pollution have to be considered, and they have to be brought into the energy economy for the first time. Fossil fuel energy workers have to be equitably transitioned into new jobs or into new careers, new education paths. And the entire grid infrastructure has to be prepared to accommodate electric vehicle charging, as transportation is now the number one source for greenhouse gas emissions pollution. So hopefully that wasn't too knotted up. But I'm glad to take any questions on this. You can get a hold of me personally, or feel free to call or contact CUB. We do a lot of other things in addition to advocating for, cheaper energy or a better environment. So feel free to reach out to me personally and ask me to follow up with anything. And of course, happy to stick around and answer questions in this too. So I will stop sharing now and we can move on.
Great. Thanks to all of our presenters for this wonderful information. I'd like to invite our participants to go ahead and use the chat space if they have any questions at this time for our presenters. Also, if you wouldn't mind taking a minute and visiting the URL that's shown on the screen, we have a brief evaluation. That would be great if we could get your feedback on that as well. So yeah, at this time, if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop those in the chat space. Maybe as we're waiting, Scott, can you just give us maybe another minute on sort of Cub and what their role is and some of the things that you're working on?
Yeah, so like it showed in my last slide there, Cub's overall mission is to advocate for consumers. We do that before the General Assembly, before the Illinois Commerce Commission, and before the courts. A big part of our job is to educate the public, usually through in-person events, but any means necessary. And we are policy advocates also. Whichever policies are going to guarantee consumer savings, but also address some of those larger issues.
Great, thank you for that. We had an inquiry if you would mind putting your contact number in the chat space. They were looking for a phone number for you so they can follow up, I'm assuming. Scott specifically, they're asking. And then the next question is, do any of the pieces of energy legislation address building code, e.g. to get closer to net zero energy ready buildings, EV infrastructure and garages, etc.?
Yes, so some of the legislation that is being worked on now is going to address that, is going to address those issues at both the state level and at the municipal level.
Excellent. The next question is, would the funds up front from Ameren for what they estimate will be generated but unused apply both to homeowners and nonprofit agencies, such as those 501c3s, ran shelters? And they're asking specifically about solar power.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different depending on how a person gets access to solar. If you're an individual homeowner and you're purchasing a solar system, then let me read the question. It applies a little bit. Generally, it is the same, but the way that so homeowners do it directly through them, and nonprofits or the shelters, things like that. That happens through what are called power purchase agreements. So there are some differences there, and that's something again that I would be happy to follow up with to help make that a little bit clearer, because it does get a little dicey, a little complicated.
Great, thank you. The next question, we had a comment that someone said, excellent summary of electric deregulation, legislative history, and great insight into what the 2020 legislation will have to address. So just some feedback there. And then the next question we had was, do you have the timeline of the next community solar rec program, and has there been money allocated for this by the state? If I'm not mistaken, I think we're kind of right around that time. So that'll be something I can follow up with. If you want to send me an email or give me a call, I can make sure to get that information, just to make sure that I've given the most current information. And then we had a comment that said, power purchase agreements that you just referenced is something that the Corps officers at the Salvation Army may be following up on.
Excellent.
And then we had a reminder from Carol, who will be an upcoming presenter, that Ameren, Illinois and ComEd will each present over the next couple of weeks in this series on energy efficiency policy and programs. So a little plug for our upcoming webinars there. Then we had a question, can a person who has solar on their residence supplying about 80% of their electricity participate in community solar?
That's an interesting question and a good one, and it's something that recently came up. We recently became aware of at Cub, and we're kind of still looking into that, and also evaluating whether or not a consumer would actually want to do that if they could. And so I think the short answer is that it might be possible to do that. We're just not sure that it would be a great idea because there are several factors that go into finding out how much of a project you're going to be subscribed to. And when, you know, so much of your own energy usage is offset by your rooftop solar, it kind of makes those numbers a little bit tricky. But again, I can provide some more detailed information on that. If you would like to send me an email, I'd be glad to get that information, like our latest thinking on that.
Great. So we had a question for any and all speakers. Have you participated in the Solar for All program in any capacity? And if so, are you seeing pros, cons of that program?
I personally have not participated. I do not live in Ameren or ComEd territory, so I cannot participate in that program.
I've also not participated in that program as you know, an income qualified person. I have participated in some of the grassroots education that goes into that program. So I've seen it from a couple of different angles, and I've seen it first from the policy angle and then from like the implementation angle. And you know, the obvious pro to that is that it's a way, like I said, for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to participate in community solar, or I guess it's a way for people to get a guaranteed savings on their bill of their supply portion of their bill of up to 50%, or a guaranteed savings of 50% on the supply portion. So in that regard, it's wonderful. And you know, the implementation with any new program, especially something as significant as Solar for All, has been a little bit bumpy. You know, with all of these programs, there's been far more demand than there is supply. There are more people who are interested in signing up for community solar than there is room to have those. So that's why I say that, you know, something that has to be addressed in future legislation is keeping those incentives funded and keeping that that incentive to build up so that we can build and implement and fix problems that exist in Solar for All or community solar.
Excellent. We had another question about whether or not a copy of the presentation will be shared. And yes, we will send out both the slides as well as a link to the recording of today's webinar. Does anybody else have any questions for our presenters? If not, I think, Nancy, do you have a poll question you'd like folks to fill out real quick? Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit more feedback, it's just a quick one question on whether or not this program increased your knowledge around energy efficiency policy and programs. We got some votes rolling in. I thank you. As folks are still voting, I'd just like to thank everybody for participating in today's webinar. And again, we hope you'll be able to join us next week, noon, Thursday, August 27th, where we'll welcome Ameren for the second part of this energy efficiency webinar series. You'll receive more information for this webinar in the follow-up email today, as I mentioned. And you may also visit our website for this and other future webinars, which is go.illinois.edu/LGE. Might drop that in the chat space as well so that you have that link. And I'll invite if our presenters have any last comments they'd like to make, I would welcome that opportunity. Otherwise, I would just thank Ashley, Gabriel, and Scott. Any last thoughts, guys?
For me, I just thank you for the opportunity to come speak in this series. I think it's a wonderful idea to have this, and thank you all for watching, participating, and I look forward to talking with some of you.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same thing. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak to you guys, and it was a pleasure, and I had fun doing it.
Thanks, Gabe. All right, well, thanks everybody for your participation, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. Be looking for that follow-up email with the link to the recording, the slides, and then maybe some information about the upcoming webinar as well. Thanks, everybody.